everybody. Good morning. This is really exciting to be back here. It's been about a year since I was last in Charlottesville. I was here on a crazy 5-month-long bus tour. Had an amazing night, which ended at the White Spot, ordering, as great crazy nights should, ordering a lot of Gus burgers. But it's great to be back here. This is a place where I made so many amazing memories. I spent 4 years at the University of Virginia. I was a history major. Yes, humanities majors. Yes. Yes, we can. And everyone's always so surprised because they're like, oh yeah, computer science. I'm like, no, my co-founder, the smart one, he was the CS major, but I made the mascot, which is true. And I named it. This was at Alderman Library. Every time you go into Alderman, great library, every time you go in there, no, that is where Reddit really got started. Yeah, truth. Okay, so I've got a little bit of a story to share. I was told to really talk about some of the early days, the founding story of Reddit, and I wanted to talk even earlier about the stuff that no one ever asks me about, because we started a company that actually failed miserably while we were here in Charlottesville, but I'll get into that. Today, you all probably know about Reddit. Hopefully, how many of y'all are Redditors? Yes, upvotes to all of you. Thank you for Redditing. It has gone from a project to UVA students started out of an apartment to something that's the 10th largest site in the country, and it started here in Charlottesville, and yeah, yes, Charlottesville. Also, fun fact: we had a pretty. There have been a lot of amazing moments on the site. One of my favorites, and I think one of the big milestones, was when the President of the United States did an AMA, did an Ask Me Anything interview. Now, little known fact, he actually did that interview from Charlottesville. He was on the tour at the time, decided to fire up a laptop, get on Reddit, answer questions for about an hour and a half in real time from anyone who wanted to ask them. And it was this amazing moment, because I'm sitting here watching this thing, and I'm like, how did the president know to come to Charlottesville to do his AMA? Now, some people said it was just a coincidence. I want to believe it was some kind of fate, but it was so freaking cool, because I think there is this misconception that great ideas, great startups, great big world-changing companies have to start in big cities, have to start in places like Silicon Valley, certainly when it comes to tech, and that's just not true. But this is where Reddit's at today, and we've got over just about 10,000 active communities about everything. Whatever you're into, corgis, great, there's a corgi community. Sports, whatever divisions, whatever interests. Even UVA has its own subreddit. But long before there was a UVA subreddit, which you should all subscribe to, r/UVA, there was UVA. And that's where this all got started. I actually took one tour of Charlottesville, and I knew, this is the only place I applied to. My parents weren't thrilled with that, but I was like, fuck it, all the eggs going in this basket. Why not? This is where I want to go. And full disclosure, I applied early decision because I knew my GPA wasn't great, but it was good enough to apply early decision and have a shot out of state. And so I didn't apply anywhere else. And before Ask Historians, amazing community, like I said, I was a history major. I declared my first year, which is a little early, but I took this amazing ancient Greece class that just blew me away, and I was like, I got to do this. I got to apply. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do with my life? Then I realized, all right, history major, I can be a lawyer. Yeah, why not? That world needs more of those. And no, but I wanted to be an immigration lawyer. I was really excited about what I could do with that. And 2 years into my time at UVA, I had an epiphany at a Waffle House. The one on 29. And it's great. It's great. It is so cool. And I tell people about this Waffle House thing, and it's also a very clear indicator of where you're from, because there are plenty of people in like the Pacific Northwest who are just like, what? Waffle, huh? Do they have artisanal waffles there? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. Kind of. But this is where, on a Saturday morning, my good friend and I, Jack Thorman, walked out of an LSAT prep class. Kaplan had offered one of these things where you could go take the 4-hour long, whatever, simulated LSAT. and you get your grades afterwards, and they try to sell you some kind of package to do better later. And we looked at each other like 30 minutes in, and we both instinctively knew what this moment needed was waffles. And so we left, which I can only imagine what everyone else in the room was thinking. We just got up and left, and we went and we had waffles. And sitting there at the Waffle House on 29, we talked about whether or not we really wanted to be lawyers. And I couldn't come up with a good excuse for it. I just walked out of an LSAT prep class for waffles because I was hungrier than I was interested in studying for this damn thing. But I was a history major who was obsessing. I was obsessing over my GPA, which was so dumb. I was obsessing over it because I thought, well, law schools are going to judge me based on that. I got to work my ass off. And it was a good thing I was enjoying the work that I was doing, but it was ultimately not on a path that was really, really, truly, when I was honest with myself, for me. And look, frankly, I mean, 3 years, very expensive, and a piece of paper that means you have to essentially be a lawyer. And I decided against that. And I figured, all right, well, what am I going to do with my life? And I had an amazing professor, had a number of amazing professors at UVA. One of them was Professor Mark White. And yeah, represent. And Professor White, he gave me this opportunity. So there was a summer break, all right, and I'd actually gotten an internship lined up at Ogilvy. I was going to do an internship at Ogilvy, big like PR marketing agency, and it was an unpaid internship. But at the time, I was like, "It's an internship in New York. It's going to be amazing. I don't care. Like, this is going to be awesome." And he said, "Hey, I'm taking a bunch of UVA students to Singapore, and they're going to compete in this technopreneurship conference." Classic Singapore. It's like technology entrepreneurship in one conference. And it's a week and a half, and it's all expenses paid. And as soon as he was like, all expenses paid, I was like, damn, I've always wanted to go to Singapore. Sure, let's do it. Forget Ogilvy. I'm going to take 2 weeks and have some fun in Southeast Asia and hopefully, you know, represent UVA well, right? Because we were going as a team. It was sort of competitive. Incidentally, I did not represent UVA well at all. The team that I was paired with, you were all given like patents that you were supposed to sort of build a business model and pitch around and then pitch at the end of the week. My patent, the one we were assigned, was like already invalidated by like 6 other patents. So it was essentially worthless. So we just said, forget it. And we just hung out and ate a bunch of food and drank a lot. But, so I'm sorry, we did not represent UVA very well. But what did matter was that first night, I was out with Professor White, or Mark, and pitched him on an idea that me and my buddy had back when we were sitting, this would have been Preston Square Apartments, just eating pizza, talking about stuff we wanted in the world. And the idea was pretty straightforward, all right? So there were a bunch of restaurants there on the corner, and we hated waiting in lines. Lines were lame. And Steve was so used to getting gas at Sheetz. Remember Sheetz with the touch screens? So that used to be a really innovative thing. Like super, it was light years ahead of any other food service because you could just touch a screen and then the food would arrive. And Steve would sit there and be like, damn, I could just do this from my phone outside. I mean, I don't know if maybe he's just very lazy, but like he saw the potential to avoid just even having to go inside and wait in line to do it from his phone. And he tells me this and I'm just like, dude, you could use this everywhere. Why should you ever have to wait in another line if you could just order from your phone? We thought, this is brilliant, and we pitched Mark on it. Now, there were a few things we didn't totally take in consideration, which is one, this was the smartest phone at the time. It's the Palm Trio. I think it's the 650. So it was a different age. A few diehards. I really liked it. I don't think the stylus is coming back, but Google's trying to make it happen. But the point is, it was this in Blackberries, right? I know, too soon. But the point was, nice, lots of nerds. The point is, flip phones were basically the norm, and so we're gonna have to come up with some kind of clever hack, some kind of creative way in order to get people to order this stuff. But you know, Mark, he said, you know what? I get pitched a lot of ideas, and this one's not terrible. I think you actually have a decent shot of this. You got to start talking to your clients. Go talk to restaurants. Start actually building a prototype of this. And so we did. And we incorporated a company. We incorporated a company here in Virginia, an LLC, Red Brick Solutions, LLC. The Red Brick was obviously because of Charlottesville, and the Solutions was because we were starting a software company and wanted to put solutions in the name. I don't know. But we talked to every restaurant on the corner and started getting them signed up. And back then people were taking orders via fax. Like the online order would come in via fax and someone would rip it off and make it. And so it was not the most technologically advanced restaurants, but we thought, all right, that's fine. We can hack this. We can give them hotspots. We can find some way to make this work. And we had, by the end of our junior year, we felt really good. Oh, sorry, by the end of our third year. This is what happens when you leave Charlottesville for too long. You have to acclimate to the normals. Fourth year, we're feeling pretty good. Fourth year at this point, I've now convinced Steve to turn down the job offer he has at a software company in Virginia in order to work with me with no guarantees of an income at any point in the near future, just on the promise that like we could live like college students for some indefinite period of time. But that was appealing, right? Because you're in school and it's like beer, check, pizza, check, great. What more do you need? And it was a huge asset, and somehow I was able to convince him. His mother took a little bit more convincing, but we had this opportunity our senior year. It was during our spring break, fourth year, dang it, fourth year, spring break, and everyone else in Virginia was heading, I don't know, to Mexico. They were going south, right? It's fourth year spring break. We went to Boston. We went all the way up to Boston, and it was cold, and there was snow, but we went because this dude was giving a talk at Harvard. It was called How to Start a Startup. I thought, all right, well, that's what we're doing. This sounds very helpful. We need to hear this guy speak. And his name is Paul Graham. And afterward, Steve got an autograph from him in one of his many books, and I offered to buy him coffee in exchange for pitching him on this idea we had had. And I stressed, I was like, we came up from Virginia. And he was shocked. He was like, you came all the way up from Virginia to hear me talk? And we're like, yeah, we're nerds. It's our spring break. Like, what else would we do? And he said, sure. So we spoke. We had coffee. And he said, you know what? This is not a bad idea. Same thing Mark said. He said, I've heard way worse ideas. Think you might be onto something. And so a couple weeks later, he announces Y Combinator. Now, today, Y Combinator is the premier early stage investors in tech startups. They've invested in Dropbox, Airbnb, Stripe, Zenefits, multi-billion-dollar companies. And they're the best in the game. Now, back then, it was this brand new idea, and they were just trying it out. But as soon as we heard about it, the proposition was pretty appealing, right? We're about to graduate. They would give us $12,000, which would give us enough money to basically just work our butts off for a whole summer, living up in Boston, building something and hopefully launching something that would give us a chance to raise another round of funding and keep it all going. So I thought, this is perfect. Like, we're about to graduate. This guy already likes our idea. Like, easy, right? So we applied. We got called up for interviews, and we crushed it. Oh, man. We did such a great job. And then that night, we're out drinking and having a good time. And I heard there were a few awes. I know, I love cats too. Even drunk cats. So we're out drinking in, this would be Harvard Square. And we're drinking, and we get the call, and they're like, hey, sorry, but we're rejecting you, which sucked. And so, but we were already drinking, so that was great. We just kept that going. It was a sadder misery drinking then, but we were still, gonna get through it, right? We knew we were gonna prove them wrong. At least that's what we told ourselves. And it wasn't easy because, there in Harvard, you'd meet all these guys, and this is an entire meme on the internet that I'm not allowed to say on stage because it's slightly profane. But the point is, we were meeting these guys, sort of classic Harvard frat dudes who were also drinking, have a good time. They were a little lit up. And they were bragging to everybody about how they'd just gotten these great jobs at Lehman Brothers. And who knows how that worked out for them. But it really hurt, right? That was like not the salt in the wound, that was like those were the flaming daggers in the wound. And at some point there, I kind of sheepishly was like, you know what, well, my buddy and I just got accepted into Y Combinator, and we're starting this amazing company. It's called My Mobile Menu. I mean, it wasn't the highlight of my life, okay? I felt terrible. I really felt pathetic at that moment. But it was tough because that was a full hearty dose of rejection, right? Was going to be destined for greatness, and then we were back on a train to Charlottesville, and hungover and trying to finish up our senior theses, and we get a call from Paul Graham, and he says, "Listen," this is the next morning. He's like, "Listen, we still don't like your idea." Okay. Didn't need to call me for that, Paul. But he's like, "Listen, you know what though? We like you too." And one of our partners, Jessica, she woke up this morning and told everyone that we needed to bring you all back. She fought for you. She said, "These two have to be in the program. We have to invest." And we got on the next train right back north to meet with them and accept their money. And the only condition was that we work on something else. So they said, "Forget, it's too early for mobile. Build something in a browser that solves your problem every morning." And we took that to heart. And it was 2005, so there's no real social media at this point. Facebook is still just in colleges. There's no Twitter, Foursquare, there's nothing else. And there's certainly no smartphones. And so we decided to build just that, to build something that would solve our problem every morning, to find out what's new and interesting online. And there we were, showed up to Medford, Massachusetts. This is a still from a film. This is basically the neighborhood where we started writing probably the most busy 3 months of our life in terms of code writing and software building for Reddit. And that was us on the first day of Y Combinator, like on class photo day. You can see I'm repping my UVA hat up there. I also have a shirt which already has a drawing of our mascot on it, even though we don't yet have a product. Which is, I advise founders now, and I'm like, don't do that. Like, start with the product. But we had no clue what we were doing. No fucking idea. No clue. We made so many mistakes. We got a few things right, but the thing that I always try to disabuse people of is this notion that others might have it all figured out, because no one does at all. We certainly didn't. I still don't. And most of the time, we're just hacking it. But we use experience and we use expertise to help us hack it, but we're all hacking it. And so no matter what your entrepreneurial ambitions are, you're probably going to see some people in your field, in your industry, in your whatever, who seem like they've got it all figured out. They don't. No one does. But this was us, those very first moments of Reddit. We didn't have some grand plan. We didn't have some big vision. We had this janky sketch. I don't know if anyone's seen this one before. This is the very, 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 very first iteration. We made this while we were still here in Charlottesville. This was just like a quick mock-up. You can see it was called Snoo back then. Because right, I'd introduce myself and be like, "Oh, I'm blah, 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 founder of snoo.com. And then people would say, "What's Snoo?" And I'd be like, "Exactly." Yeah. So this is what we're going to call Reddit. And you can see the mascot was a little jankier back then. I made that when I was bored in class, 4th year, and then went home and illustrated it in a Paint Shop Pro 5. But we weren't able to afford, the guy who wanted snoo.com wanted $4,000, and we were like, fuck that. So we ended up going with Reddit, which back then was like a $10, it was an open, unowned domain name. The idea being that people would say, "I read it on Reddit," which apparently no one has ever done. Okay, well that was the thinking behind it. And the mascot ended up being called Snoo because it was going to be the original name of the company. We just couldn't afford the domain name. There's some fun facts. This, however, though, was like about as janky as it gets. This is all just HTML and CSS. There's nothing working underneath the hood here. This is all just a facade. But you can see, like, we had little things. We knew that there was going to be some metric for voting, and we called those pops. It was unclear why I chose pops, but I take full responsibility for that. Also important, this notion of a leaderboard. That was really, really helpful in the early months, even years of Reddit. And that just came from the fact that Steve and I played a lot of video games. There wasn't a ton of thinking behind all this. It was just like, this feels right. This is when things started getting slightly more real, but still kind of not. In this mind, we were thinking like, probably more along the lines of like a feed reader. Google had I think a decent one at that point, like for RSS. But the problem is, no one knows what the hell RSS is. No normal is gonna be like, I need an RSS feed in my life. So we kept trying to iterate around this. And I'm showing you all this stuff, like this is on a Dropbox folder somewhere in the ether. I'm showing you all this stuff just to show you really how iterative this all was, like how there were a lot of false starts and missteps just over the span of months while we continued to grow. And we also played a lot of World of Warcraft. I'd say we both hit level 60, which was the cap back then. And for 3 months, like we wrote code and we played World of Warcraft. And this was actually the first version. And I finally got a nice high-res version of this photo, which is really important because then you can see that I have -1 karma. That's because Steve is a dick, and he downvoted first ever submission to Reddit. And it was me, and I knew it was him, because there's only 2 of us in the room. Don't applaud for him. This just fills him with confidence and strength. No, but it was a sign of things to come, perhaps. But this was the first version we got online, and we were not proud of it, but we were happy with it. And this is something you'll hear all the time, people saying, if it's perfect, it's too late, it's not, you'd rather get something out that's good enough, that's solving a problem, than waiting 6 months. And I see plenty of founders spinning their wheels, trying to get something perfect. And if I were to guess why, it's probably because, and it's interestingly correlated with the more successful founders academically. And I think the way that goes is, if we've been trained for the last 20 or so years to aim for grades, right? To aim for satisfying a certain finite amount of goals or expectations, you know where the bar is, right? And you're like, great, check, 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 check. This satisfies it, I'll probably get an A. However, entrepreneurship has no such guidelines. And I think the founders who tend to struggle are the ones who have gotten so used to and so built around this idea of very specific goals. And then when things don't work out, because they never work out, it's really hard to draw the line of being like, all right, well, why isn't this working? When if all of your life, everything you have tried, you've figured out the system for, you've figured out how to hack. There's no way, unfortunately, to get like extra credit in entrepreneurship. That's the gift and the curse of it. But the good news is, for all of you who have never cared about your GPA, congratulations. You have a head start over the idiots like me who obsessed over it. But this was something we worked through, we learned through, and we had so many different mock-ups and ideas. There was actually a point when we were gonna have stars for ratings. You could rate an article 5 stars or 3 stars or 1 star. And this is because I was stupid. I was looking at iTunes and I just thought, oh, well, this makes so much sense. This is the ranking system everyone kind of understands. Everyone knows what 5 stars means. And Steve, in all of his wisdom, pulled open my iTunes and was like, show me how many things you've actually ranked something other than like 5 stars. And I was like, okay, none. Yeah, this is too precise of a system, right? It needs to be just as easy as like, I like this, I don't like this. And eventually we started getting there. But like I said, these are mock-ups that never saw the light of day. What's wild, this one here, is before upvotes and downvotes, we just had text that said interesting or boring. Because we couldn't even figure, because like, right, it takes 5 minutes to come up with an icon for an upvote and a downvote. Actually, it took me like 4 days. But like, interesting, boring, good enough. Just put it online, see if people click on it, right? You could be over-optimizing. I could have still been counting pixels for the perfect upvote arrow. But instead, it was just good enough. Let's just put text. If people click on that, we know we're doing something right. And it's finding those ways to simplify and keep iterating. And you can see Reddit's now coming to fruition. It's starting to look, this is also an indictment on how little it has changed in 10 years, but you can see it starting to come together more. And this is all in the span of like, I'd say 2 months. Over here, we had these hide buttons, which were a terrible idea. We put them all the way over there. We finally shoved them into these really unpleasant buttons down under here. We were calling it boosts back then. We're eventually gonna get to points. But all of this happened in the span of a few very, very productive months, where, like I said, all we did was play World of Warcraft and write code and get users. And I think so many founders, and it's great right now, 10 years later, everyone wants to start a startup, right? Etsy just IPO'd. Everyone, it's like starting a band, right? starting a startup. And that's great. I'm glad that entrepreneurship is so alive and well. I just want to make sure that for whatever you want to do as founders, as creators, you're focusing on the things that matter. You're not doing the window dressing of starting a company. And trust me, I spent way too much time designing our business cards, okay? That was silly. It didn't matter. There were so many things that we did that were superfluous to the core thing. Now like I said, we got the important things right. But it was partially because we had people around us saying, like, stop working on your damn business card and actually focus on writing code and getting users. And so, back then, it was a lot harder too. We had to install our own servers. We bought them from Newegg and put them together in our apartment. We didn't really have a very good work-life balance. That is a toilet with a laptop in the magazine rack. There is so much wrong with that. By that I mean the Learning Perl book. That is what is so wrong with that. Yeah, okay. But this was our view, and it was great because I wanted to make sure Steve had it because he was doing the hardcore developing. But this was good enough. And this is the other point that I just want to make, which is when you are at a point in your life when you don't have responsibility, especially when you're fresh out of school, it's such an amazing time to be creating because you can forego a lot of the things that you just don't even know about yet. Like the idea of weekends or a real salary or all that stuff. And this is where we eventually moved. We were on the top floor. This is in Somerville, Massachusetts, right? This is not the heart of Silicon Valley. This is not a billion-dollar building that's LEED certified, although that's cool, with a bunch of solar panels and Aeron chairs. I guess what I'm trying to say is you can just rent a little apartment above, what is this, an insurance office and a camera store? I hope they're still in business. And build something spectacular. And this was our roof, and I have no idea why that Reddit alien was spray painted on the chimney. But the point is, this was what we needed for this is what we needed for a good time. This is what we needed for our basic means to start this thing. And so wherever you are, with just about whatever you have, this is potential. And we've only spent $500 advertising Reddit. It was all stickers, which we put everywhere, and some shirts. But these two clowns were able to do it, all right? It's me and Steve. Steve's dressed as Paul Graham. You remember him from earlier? You can kind of see it. But if these two clowns can do it, you all certainly can. And like I said, it wasn't the most glorious. This was actually the night after that Halloween party. I don't know who did that to our bathroom, but it was not very nice. Like I said, this was not, forget what you saw on the social network, forget what you might think life in Silicon Valley is like. Starting a company, going on one of these endeavors is not glamorous. It's not supposed to be. It's about making things that people want and hopefully making things that people love. And today, like I said, it's amazing. The President of the United States came on and did an AMA, but his isn't even the best one. It's not even close. I'm sorry. It's not even close to the best one. One of the best is from a guy who repairs vacuums. He's a vacuum repair guy. I don't know if you get the Breaking Bad reference, but he came on for an AMA, one of these real-time Ask Me Anything interviews, just a day after the Breaking Bad episode where Walter had to get his identity wiped by a vacuum repair guy. And he answered questions, literally, about vacuums for 8 hours. He answered every single question that you've ever had about vacuums or that you might wonder from a vacuum repair guy. What's the weirdest thing you found in a vacuum? What are some of the ways you can avoid causing yourself bodily harm with a vacuum? You just have to read the thread. The fact is, this was riveting. We actually got to interview him for the podcast that we started on Reddit. It's called Upvoted. You should all subscribe. But in talking to him, it really crystallized something else, which is that the way this platform, Reddit, and I really do believe the way the internet works so well, is that it does create, if we have net neutrality, it creates this level playing field of ideas. And there's no reason why an interview with a vacuum repair guy shouldn't be or couldn't be as interesting as an interview with the President of the United States. I know, obviously, the President has a lot more responsibility, and he's probably got some better stories. But the fact is, they're all still people. And what I really like about what we've seen emerge over the last 10 years is this recurring truth, which is if you have an interesting story to share, and if you are if you have something that you care about, that you're passionate about, there is a place for that to be spotlighted and showcased and for people to really celebrate it. And that makes me feel really good. I feel like if nothing else, we've proven this much out. And for the next 10 years, I hope, it's 10 years old now, Reddit, I hope we can do even more. So a lot of those stories we've we've spotlighted on this podcast called Upvoted, which we just started a couple months ago when I got back. And I hope you'll have a listen. And we've seen the power of what the connected web can do with the fight for net neutrality. That was an awesome thank you note from the president to Reddit. So for all of you Redditors, thank you for helping us with that. Because it's going to make sure that a whole nother generation can start the next Reddit and one day destroy us. But also, more interestingly, create really amazing stuff that helps people just be great. But that's all I have to say. And I hope we're going to go to a panel. I hope you all will get at me on Twitter. You can get me on Reddit too with any questions you might have. But thank you.